So I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday and we touched on some interesting topics. And I'm going to discuss those topics on camera because I think, quite frankly, they're interesting. You know, anytime you think of something interesting, you like to put it on the internet in video format. So we were eating hibachi while we were having this conversation. And, you know, we got a table. We didn't get the theatrical show where somebody uses the hibachi table. But, you know, when a customer in there, they did like a big inferno. Like there was a big explosion of fire when someone was doing the theatrical hibachi show. And I said, you know, I wonder if there's a lot of hibachi-related injuries. And we came to the conclusion, you know, if people were getting engulfed in flames from watching hibachi, the restaurant wouldn't stay in business. You know, there'd be lawsuits. If you were putting your life in danger getting hibachi, well, a lot of people wouldn't be going to the restaurant because, you know, you'd be risking your life getting a delicious steak hibachi, you know. So, needless to say, I'm sure the people who do the explosions of fire at the restaurant are trained and nobody gets hurt. You know, they're professionals. They're professional theatrical hibachi chefs. The next one, we were discussing conspiracy theories. The first one we were talking about was Kurt Cobain. Although, you know, many of his lyrics seem, he seems like he was really depressed. He was really intense. He seems like he could have been suicidal. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know Kurt Cobain. We're just theorizing. The conclusion about his death is it was death by suicide, you know. But some people speculate, could somebody have murdered him? And here is my take on it. And I could be wrong. Obviously, I'm not law enforcement. If he was murdered, I'm sure a lot of these law enforcement agencies know a lot more than me, and they have a lot more information than the conspiracy theorists. So I'm assuming that, and they've heard it all, you know, they've heard all the theories, they've heard I'm assuming he really did commit suicide. But then again, who am I? I'm just some guy from behind a computer screen, from behind a keyboard. I'm just somebody venting my opinion, much like the conspiracy theorists are venting their opinion. Trust law enforcement. Then we talked about September 11th, how some people think, what they claim is it was Islamic self-righteous terrorists who hijacked airliners and crashed it into the World Trade Center, Pentagon, and, you know, committed a terrorist attack. However, some people suspect it was an inside job and it was done because they wanted to go to war for oil. You know, that's the conspiracy theorists. I'm assuming, you know, the government wouldn't do that. I'm assuming it really was terrorists from Afghanistan, the Al-Qaeda, and they really hijacked airliners. I'm assuming face value. What we see is what we get. I'm assuming that's the reality. I'm assuming... But and then we talked about the John F. Kennedy assassination. Yeah, there were some suspicious things that went on, like, him getting assassinated, then Jack Ruby getting assassinated. I mean, could there be cover-ups and conspiracy theories and nefarious things that went on beneath the surface? I guess it's possible. Call me Pollyanna, call me naive. But I think the simplest explanation is often the right one. I think they call it Occam's razor. You know, usually what we're led to believe happened is usually what happened, you know. And the conspiracy theories are usually people, you know, finding little inconsistencies and little suspicious things and creating a whole narrative and story based on, you know, ideas of reference and predicate logic and weird clues, and they're constructing like a monument of delusion, basically. And lastly, we were talking about, you know, looking up, you know, celebrities and calling their cell phones or calling their landlines or calling their house phones. I said, you know, obviously most celebrities, especially if they're a rich and famous pop superstar, especially if they're a movie star or some really important celebrity, they're going to be unlisted. Their phone number's not going to be available to the public. maybe some obscure hockey player who plays on Long Island. You know, maybe if you Googled some, you know, random hockey player, maybe you could find their name and number and give them a call. But let's say like a millionaire pop superstar, I'm assuming, you know, they're trying to be private. They want to be anonymous. You know, they don't want a stalker, or they don't want people calling their numbers. So I'm assuming it would be really hard to find their number and give them a call, because I mean, I'm assuming these hockey players don't have lots of people that are obsessed with them, you know. So it would be a lot like for example, like sometimes they'll even come into, you know, like a sports bar, you know, in Levittown, you know, and everybody will be like, oh, it's the hockey player, and they'll all be excited, but they can just sit there and nobody will harass them and nobody will even care, really, because they're just some obscure hockey player from Long Island, you know.